Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. Today we're talking to Jacob and Hassan, some familiar faces, hopefully for people who have been following the channel for a little while. These guys have kind of progressed in their journey, so I'm really excited to catch up with them. And I know some of you guys were also asking, hey, can we get an update on Jacob and Hassan? So, this will be the first update you get. Hopefully we get a little bit more coming soon. My name is Zachary. In case you haven't been here before, I will be hosting this episode. And today we'll be talking a little bit about, the journey that you might find yourself on to become a CFI while in training, what that looks like as a student. And then, we're going to catch up on what you guys expect as a CFI and some of the things you're excited about teaching. For sure. And we'll just kind of fill in the blanks from there. But before we get rolling too much, I'd love to have you guys reintroduce yourself one more time about, maybe your name and where you're at and in your program and all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jacob. I just finished up CFII rating a couple weeks ago, and then also went through the interview process. And currently, we're both in the hiring process. Just started that at the beginning of this week, and then next week we're going to be doing the multi-engine training. So it's going to be a little bit busy, and then if all goes well, should be instructing down at the new Conroe location in the beginning of June.
Sweet. That's crazy that you guys are moving. I didn't know that until just the other day.
Yeah.
You both are going?
Yeah, both going to Conroe.
Yeah.
Down to Houston. Very similar to what he said. I'm Hassan and started the program about a year ago, May 15th, and finished II. And yeah, I'm in the process of getting hired. So shirt's a different color now.
Sweet. Yeah. So these guys were in red shirts every time you've seen them so far, and they just popped up in a black shirt the other day after thrust day. And so that was pretty.
Feels different.
It was the same day.
It was the same day. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was like
changed.
right after the event, maybe, right?
Yeah, because we went from red shirts in the event, and then after the event, we had the black shirts
Put in
on.
the best.
Man, why couldn't they have hooked y'all up before?
They didn't want us to get too big headed. I guess.
That's what it is. Yeah, it is cool. Well, again, if you haven't seen the things we've done with them, we have a day in the life. That was cool, and I think we had you guys on the pod as well.
Yes, sir.
So before we get rolling into it, what rating were y'all working on before?
Private.
Yeah.
The very beginning, pretty
I
much.
didn't realize that.
Straight off the lot, very new.
Since you've come all the way from private to now, I mean, there's been a lot that you've done. How do you feel? What's the difference?
I mean, I'll say everyone says this, and when you're in it, you don't really understand, but it goes by really fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the main thing I'm thinking about.
I'm going to second that because I remember very vividly being in private, maybe 2 weeks in, and I look at black shirts walk around, and I'm just like, I can't even fathom being at that point.
Yeah.
And they're like, nah, it's okay. You'll be there in 2 seconds. Looking back, it literally felt like 2 seconds. I kind of wish I could go back for real so I can appreciate it.
What was it like flying then versus how you feel when you fly now? The actual
totally
feeling of
different.
being in the cockpit.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, if I'm being honest, as a private student, you're kind of like a baby.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where it's like whatever my instructor says, I'll do. If he wants me to go left, I'll go left. No questions asked. Right? I don't know why I'm going right or left, but I'm gonna go wherever he wants me to go. But as you get closer to the instructor ratings, like CFI and CFII, your mindset has to change. You're not a student anymore. So now you're wondering why we're going left, why we're staying in this area. What's the traffic doing around us, etc. It's a little bit more on our shoulders per se, which I think is the biggest difference. My eyes were just so big in private. I was like, I don't know, should I fly today? Is it safe to fly? Now it's totally different. It's like we have to be on it.
Yeah, this is really not.
That's
I
a lot
can
of
imagine
it.
the pressure.
Private, it's very hands-on, eyes off.
Yeah.
You're not really looking for traffic. I mean, you do start to do so throughout your training. I mean, you're supposed to, right? But you're not in charge of where you're going. You're not in charge of what you're doing. The instructor lays out the lesson plan. They have everything in order. And like he said, you're kind of following their instruction, right? And when you get more towards the CFI and II, you're doing the exact opposite. You're more so hands off, eyes on. My II check ride, the DPE flew about 70%. So he flew more than me.
Wow.
And that was it for a check ride because it really is, you are instructing. You're no longer in charge of just flying the plane. I mean, obviously you're going to have to, but it's a completely different shift.
Yeah.
And just your ability, your knowledge level, you look back and think, wow, I really didn't know anything. But everyone feels that way.
And kind of to piggyback off of that, even another layer, when I was in private and I'd have these stage checks and these examinations, I remember I'd be pushing the plane out to start, and I'd be shaking and like nervous and. But is recent, I think in commercial of CFI during the stage check, I was just smiling because at some point you just become numb to like the examinations and you become more confident. It's like if I do good, I do good. I mean, you just get more confident in your abilities. So
Wow.
that's also another layer.
When I talked to you guys, I just remember y'all were still studying. I mean, you guys were in housing. What were some of the things you did to kind of make sure you were proficient? And like some of the, whether it be studying or whether it be maneuvers, like how did you build confidence is really what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
when you're starting off and in private, like the last time you spoke to us, when we did live in the housing, I mean, now we don't obviously stay there anymore, but we were pretty much in there every night studying together.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much information, and even to this day, there's so much information that we don't know. And you know, you'll hear it from everybody. You'll always continue learning, but back then it's really about, you know, you have to put your head down, you have to study it, and it's easy to be more proficient actually when you're training because you're flying 5 days a week. You know, it's actually, we have so much time in the plane now, not that much relatively, but we have enough to where we should be able to go and not know how to do anything, you know, but at the same time, you fly a lot more in those early stages of your training. So it's important that you take that serious, right? Private, instrument, commercial is the most time. CFI, you get 24 hours. Double I, you get 10.
Yeah.
So you fly less and less as you go on.
You better get it in while you can get it in, right?
Literally.
I guess, It's a good point. I wouldn't have thought of it like that.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that yet.
100%.
Do you feel like there were some things that you felt like are important to help you build confidence?
I'd say just maybe an added layer that I learned later on was like complete immersion into the rating that you're in. Because you know, you can have study halls, you can have meetups with your peers, you can have flights, but what are you doing when you're at home? What are you doing while you're in the shower? I have a new technique where I'll have a video playing about aviation. It could be a mock oral where I'm hearing the questions I'm going to be asked. It could be like an aviation video about whatever, but I'm immersed into it as many hours as possible. That really helped stay engaged.
If someone heard you say that and they asked, what would that do for me? I can't study while in the shower. How would you describe that helping you?
Honestly, it may not be good for everyone. Some people need breaks, but I'll say it helped me because a lot of the time, you know, if you ever talk to your instructor and you ask them like the most, you know, crazy question in the world and they answer it really fast, what I've learned is most of the time it's because they heard it on a video that they watched a long time ago, or they studied it by reading the PHAC one day, and talking to that instructor that I knew who was just really knowledgeable. I realized that he is watching videos and he is learning on his off time. He is just finding the most, you know, different ways to study, like listening to stuff in the shower. So just finding as many ways as possible to stay knowledgeable, I think is pretty beneficial. I
was talking to some of the chiefs and they talk about how at first you're going to hear the same thing in a lot of different ways. Do you feel like it was almost repetitive at first? And do you feel like what you're talking about right now is just like, hey, I'm going to repeat it some more at home?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It can get competitive for sure, or repetitive, but it's the little stuff. Yeah. You know, that between the repetitions, it's the little nuggets that you get.
And it's really with the repetition, you'll realize too that you can hear something 5 times, and then somebody can ask you the question, and you don't have the answer. So sometimes it takes that repetition just for one little thing to stick. You know, sometimes I still go back and reference study material that I studied in private when I have to think back to, you know, what was that? Where did I remember seeing that? I'll go back and look, and it'll refresh my memory on it.
Yeah, you got to go back and get it.
I call that osmosis. Like I listen to certain things if I'm really interested in it and I know I'm going to need to learn it. I'll just play videos while I'm doing anything. I'll walk to it. I'll drive to it. And maybe I'm not even really listening to it, but that's fine. Because maybe I will listen to it.
That's big. That's huge. Yeah,
so I do that too.
One thing that I know that helped me is anytime I'm studying something or I hear a video and someone says a word that I do not know, like if somebody asks me, what's that? I can't define it. I will make sure I either write it down to look up or I just go look it up right then. Because at the end of the day, there's no point in not filling the gaps if you have the opportunity to, especially with the knowledge. It's, you know, everything needs to be learned at some point. So that's just a tip I have, is just always, if there's a word you don't know, if there's something you can't define, go look it up.
Did you ever like hear stuff you didn't know or didn't understand and then like didn't write it down and then it like bothered you because you couldn't remember what it was and how to look it up?
Yeah, and then you'll hear it again 2 months later and then you're like, okay, well I need to know what that is. And sometimes it's not something you'll always get asked about.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's like it's niche words or even like I don't even know aviation slang or just some things, but
Yeah.
like you know, today we were talking about wigwags, and
Yeah.
I was like, I forgot, I didn't know what they were
Yeah.
because I never heard the term,
Yeah.
and I looked it up, and it's just you know,
Just something someone used to describe. What
Yeah.
is it actually? Do you remember? Did you have
yeah,
to
it's
look it
just
up
it's
again?
just
Yeah.
it's just the runway guard lights, like
Oh,
that's
nice.
all it is. But it was just funny because I was like, I had never heard that term,
Yeah.
or I hadn't heard it in like 8 months, so I was like, what? I don't know what that is.
Sometimes you think you know more than you do.
Yeah.
And then I guess you get humbled. I guess that's really what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
in a situation like what you're talking about, or both of you guys, you're talking about diving deep into it and not overlooking anything, filling in the gaps. And that almost sounds like it comes from a place of like, oh, I'm not gonna get caught slipping again.
Yeah.
Did you ever like have a moment like that where you're like, I'm not on it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
get on it now.
Yeah. Yeah. One
Yeah.
time I got exposed pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A humbling experience, I have to say.
Yeah.
Barely could sleep at night. It was, I remember it was my commercial ground with my instructor.
Mm.
We're sitting down one-on-one. He's going to teach me as much as he knows.
Right.
Usually it goes pretty smooth. Like, you know, we're talking, we're going back and forth. We both know, like, I know a lot of what he's saying. But for this commercial ground, he just said, I'm going to turn up on you. I think he was trying to test me, challenge me.
Yeah.
He let out his full repertoire of what he knew, and it completely, like, shut me down. I'm like, you just know so much knowledge. I remember asking him, I'm like, how did you even get to this level?
Yeah.
He's a chief now, so it makes sense. But
Right.
I remember after walking away from that, I was like, there's levels to this, just like anything. I'm here.
Mhm.
I need to understand that,
Mhm.
and I need to progressively work to get to that level, that echelon, you know?
Mm.
Because yeah, it's apparent when you have moments like that.
Can you describe a little bit more to me? Like,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it literally was like, you know, I've memorized the basics, right? He'd be like, okay, what kind of plane do we have? Piper Archer. And it's like, okay, well, what's the identification? P28181. And then he'd be like, well, what do the numbers mean? And I'm like, that's the end of my knowledge right there. That's a line. That's all I knew. That's the basics. But there'd be a whole explanation. It's like 181 is the type of wing that I still don't want to get wrong. Don't fact check me here. But the 181 means like it's the type of wings that we have. Are they tapered? Are they not? Stuff like that I don't think you might not need to know it, but that kind of showed me like I know the basics and then there's more to it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Or, the propeller, right? The propeller hub, the metal part, the like kind of metallic looking thing. He's like, what's that called?
The cowling?
No, I mean,
I don't know what that
that's
is.
what I
I
said.
was just saying stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, what's that called? And it's called a spinner. Like, that's what they're trying to get me to say. But I'm sitting there like, I see that thing every day. Why? I don't even know what it's called. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I need to keep trying to get more in depth on what I'm flying.
You probably carried that home with you.
I kind of pride myself on the work ethic. And it felt like, although my work ethic is good, don't be complacent and don't think that that's where it ends. Whatever knowledge I thought I had going into that, that's not where it ended. So like you can be happy where you're at, but make sure that you're still chasing like further, knowledge and learning, kind of like what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So the reaction to that was simply asking way more questions, right? Now I'm trying to figure out the inner workings of everything. I'm reading the POH now. Like I'm actually word by word reading the POH.
Right.
Just trying to find as many nuggets as possible. You know what I mean?
Right, because it'll piece together.
It'll piece together.
Yeah.
So it just became way more. I just became way more like.
You allowed yourself to be curious. It sounded like.
Yeah.
You're like, I should be more curious.
Exactly.
Even like I should want to dive deep into any of it, like whether it's
Everything.
useful to my test or not. Like I'm
Exactly.
here and I'm growing in a career in the industry of aviation, and yeah, I get that. That makes sense to me.
And actually, since you said that, I do kind of want to shift onto that because that's 100% right.
Mm.
It went from because a lot of the times we're training to pass the test, but after that moment, it went from training to pass the test and knowing the basics that would pass to, like you said, training to be a better aviator, training to be a better instructor. Now that we are, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
having that type of knowledge, not just I want to pass, but I want to know.
There's
Go
a
ahead.
difference between training to pass and training to be a professional.
100%.
But did you have any moments that made you feel like, oh man, I thought I knew something that I didn't know, or I just gained a perspective. There's a whole bigger world out there than I could think of.
Pretty much every stage check, you learn something. So in that sense, it's all humbling. Every time you talk to somebody, if you're a private and you talk to an instrument student, that's humbling. Instrument student talking to a CFI is humbling. Talking to someone who's just getting hired, I talked to the people who got hired last month, and that was a little bit humbling. it all is because, you know, as an instructor, when I walk past instructors I've seen for over a year, it's a little bit humbling, you know? It's like I know they know more than me. Or, you know, that's at least the mindset I want to have, to his point, to just always continuing to learn. I just think it's all humbling in a good way because there's so many steps you have to take. It's rating and then rating and then rating and then rating and then CFI and then hours and then airlines or whatever people want to do.
Right.
Because there's always like another mountain to climb. There's always something you could be doing. So in that sense, I don't think you could really get a big head, or if you do, it's not really the right career for you.
That's good to hear from you guys. It sounds like you guys have grown a lot.
Oh man, yes, yeah.
You just got hired on SCFIs. You just got the word that, oh, I got hired by Thrust. You're gonna be moving to Conroe. What happens next? Like, you guys go into training? I mean, like, what's going on now and what happens next?
So as of right now, what it kind of looks like, because obviously we're not from Conroe, we like did all our training out here, and there's different airspaces, right? There's different stuff to learn, different procedures. So when we get shipped out there, for the first week, we'll probably do like a standardization flight, which is us just learning. We're gonna fly with one of their chiefs and just learn the law of the land, kind of.
The practice area.
The practice area and stuff like that. So then once we're found proficient in that, we should. It's you're on the line. You hit the line, right? Like, we've already done all the work per se. So like once we get down, we do the standardization, we get our students, and we go. I think at that point it's pretty hands off. If you have any questions, right, like through your day to day, you have a buddy, which is a new system they implemented.
Okay.
So we have a buddy, which is a more senior instructor, and we'll ask them questions, go back and forth. But for the most part, it's pretty hands off. It's you and your student.
Yeah.
You know.
And to that point, you get your senior instructor that's kind of like your buddy, and then you also have a chief assigned to you. So you have 2 points of direct contact as well as every other instructor that's there.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of learning about that in the NDOC process, but it seems like a pretty helpful system for new CFIs.
And this is a new system, and to add to that, I will say, like, that was one of the most things that made me nervous becoming a CFI.
Yeah.
I felt like it would be too hands off, and then I'm just like, me and my student, we're just learning each other, you know.
You're like, I just got here.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, I'm 2 weeks removed from you, bro. Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
But having that system, I will say, it should give like new instructors a lot of confidence, because it's almost like you can't lose. You just have a network and family around you to kind of help you whatever question you have or concern.
Right. And it seems like you guys kind of trust the process a little bit, in the sense that this is like the way things are done often. And people are looking out for you guys, and you do have the buddy system thing. That's kind of nice.
It's fun.
What do you usually teach first when you go into it? Is there like, how do they decide what to have you teach?
So you're always going to start off with instrument and double I students, and then you could also do commercial pretty quickly if you get commercial checked out. Private and CFI take a little bit longer. There's different requirements for each of those. Private, you have to have 100 hours of dual given, and CFI, there's a
80% pass rate.
80% pass rate requirement.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll start off teaching instrument and double I, which is, you know, pretty good considering that was the last rating we did.
Because we just got out of double I, which is instrument training.
Right.
We're more fresh with like instrument procedures. So like we're kind of like we're new with it. Like, we know, we just went through it. But then on top of that, the reason why we're avoiding teaching privates right off the bat is because with privates, they're a little bit more impressionable, right? So like you kind of have to mold them. So you want to make sure you know how to instruct first with those instrument and CFIs, those later ratings, so that when you get ready to do private, you have more of a base.
Yeah, it can't be. It's not. They don't do new instructor, new student. You know what I mean?
Because you would think, oh, I don't know as much. Let's teach people who don't need to be taught as like at a high level or whatever. But like teaching someone new is at a high level.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's not to be mistaken too. We talked a little bit about this during the hiring process, but you know, you can't just assume that just because somebody's in a rating past private, that they're going to be proficient or like completely safe. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily know
their skill
level and their habits. Right. Yeah.
And kind of on that, I know was it CFI? I think it was CFI. One of my first flights in CFI. I'm almost done with the program at this point. I remember we were doing a steep turn and I almost stalled. You know, almost stalled during a steep turn. Like, at this point, I have like 100 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. It's like, even though you're at a later rating, you still need to be as an instructor, you need to make sure that you're watching what your students doing, not getting too comfortable.
Yeah,
you can speak to that. You were doing perfect steep turns.
What? You sound like you have you have a story. You have a story, Jacob?
No, I don't have a story.
That just sounds stressful. It sounds like you guys. How long did you actually live with each other?
Sheesh.
Yeah, because I'm sure it seems like you guys have like kind of stuck with each other through the program a bit.
Crazy. Yeah.
Well, funny thing about that, we lived together for the 9 months that we signed off on whenever we signed up to go to thrust. But we started the same day and we finished 1 day apart.
That's crazy.
I'm telling you, that's rare, man.
Usually you join thrust and you move at the pace that works for you, right? I mean, of course we have systems in place to make sure you're not moving too slow, because we need you to move through the program. That's part of what we do. And we're FAA regulated, so part of what you pay for, we want to make sure we deliver. That being said, who you start with may not be who you finish at the same time as, and you find your group and you kind of stick with each other. But it seems like people who stick with each other may end at a similar time, and I think that there's a point to be made there. It seems like the fact that y'all kind of were around each other and sharpening and like we're just sharpening what you were doing together probably helped you actually finish at a similar time. Man,
and I kind of want to talk on that because you hit something good, which is when you get here and when you find your clique, your group, that's where you find the most success. So when we got here, our group, I know it was like one of the smartest students at the school. I approached her right away because I just wanted to learn from her. And from there, more and more people joined that group. And since then, we've been moving at the same pace. So there's people in our group who are going to finish, well, they actually did finish within like give or take a week. Right. By just staying together and learning from each other. So I'd say if you're a student, go to the smartest person that you know. No, seriously, like it's kind of like with sports, right? Yeah. Like you find the best competitor and you go against them. Find the smartest person you know and learn from them and befriend them, because that's really how you succeed.
They say iron sharpens iron. And
iron sharpens iron.
Like a group that you're talking about, you guys formed that naturally. Yeah. That wasn't something that Thrust built. I mean, we facilitate, sure, but like you guys find people, like you said, you approach somebody, you made friends with someone. And I just asked that question though because you can tell you guys are friends, and it's funny to hear what you said about finishing at the same time, pretty much. Like you could have easily not. Like, do you think that if you guys didn't stick together on some things, that you would have finished at the same time?
Well, no, but it's also it's a little bit of luck. You can't control the weather, but you can control what you can control. Yeah. So. It is crazy to finish, like start same day, finish 1 day apart.
Like, and maybe that's not always going to be the scenario. That's pretty wild.
But I have heard stories where people finished 1 week apart, 2 weeks apart. Like, you can go at the same pace if y'all are willing. And also it helps hold people accountable. I pushed myself because of him. If he passed the stage check, in my head, I got to go pass the stage check. I can't.
I got you, bro.
Well, it usually was the other way around. But
I got you, bro.
That's funny.
But it was just an example.
But to your point, though, I hear you, and that's what I'm saying too. If you guys didn't have that push from each other, do you think that it was more likely for you guys to finish like a month or two apart?
You just think about the people you start with. Yeah. You start with 10 people. We started with 7. Some people start with 30, and throughout the course of your training, they end up months apart, some people years apart, depending on how slow or fast you go. There's people in April who finished 6 months ago. There's people from last April who are still in the program and almost done. And so starting doesn't necessarily determine where you end up, which is why it's if you have a study group, it just helps. It just helps everyone involved.
It's interesting to see how that works.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So that being said, you guys are going to be in Conroe, and you're going to be beginning your teaching. Of course, you got a few steps to go still, but you are aiming to be CFI. So, what are some of the things that you guys are looking forward to passing on to future students?
I'll just go ahead and say, I heard a really good quote from Christopher Burrows, which is
I was gonna say this
I know you were. That's why I had to beat you to it. Favorite quote right now, which is, you want to create the student that you never were. Was that right?
Create the pilot that you
Create
were.
the pilot that you never were.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear that, what I hear is, I think as a private pilot, I don't think, or even as a pilot starting out, I just don't think I was the most, I wasn't the most, kind of aware with like my surroundings, with why, like I said, why I was doing certain things. I was just like, whatever my instructor wants, I'll do. So I think as an instructor, I'll help to, um, kind of encourage that from my student on asking them like, hey, why do you think we are? Why do you think we should go? There's traffic right there. What do you think we should do? Should we descend? Should we ascend? Where do you want to land? Which runway are we going to land at? To help kind of get them to start thinking in the way of, I am a pilot in command.
Right.
I need to be able to make the decisions for myself. For me, I never felt like, until maybe like commercial, I didn't really feel like the pilot in command because I just didn't have that confidence. But I think I can instill that in my student by having them think that way. So that's kind of what I want to do.
I like that.
Another thing we learned about was just common errors that students are making here at Thrust Flight. You know, we went over it today, and just looking at that and implementing it into the training, and also seeing where I had the same problems. So, you know, it's a combination of fixing what you did wrong, and also it's a combination of taking everything that you enjoyed that your instructors did. Instructors are very impressionable on the students. Students will probably end up teaching like how their instructors taught them.
Right.
So how I look at it is like, I want to take the best from all the instructors I had, the good, eliminate the bad, and, you know, implement that with my students.
I feel like I would approach it the similar way. I don't know anything about flying though, so I can't speak to that.
You flew though.
I flew like one time. I took control of the yoke and the rudders, but yeah,
that's something.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, do you foresee like a challenge in the way that you want to like help your students?
I don't think I can really play this whole instructor role passively. I really, you know, if I'm going to be an instructor, I want to put my best foot forward. So it's going to take a lot of mental energy for sure. I mean, we could just sit there and just let them play around but I think just doing this, I'm going to want to see them succeed just as much as I want to see myself succeed. So that's just, I think that has to be the mentality, because if you join, and we got told this, if you join to be an instructor just to get to the airlines, that's going to make your instructor step, it's going to make it miserable, because all you're thinking about is the next step. So I really want to enjoy the instructor step and take that to as high as I can. You know what I mean?
Just like you were talking about earlier, it takes time to learn how to fly and be a proficient pilot. So that's pretty interesting to hear you guys talk about that now, because before we were just talking about, hey man, I'm studying and stuff. You know, and you're still gonna be studying, but there's more to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Is there a maneuver for each of you guys that you're like, man, like I'm gonna be so good at teaching this maneuver because I did so bad, I learned so much, or something like that?
You can go with the specific maneuver. Are you gonna go with the specific maneuver?
I don't know where I'm going.
Because if you were gonna go there, I was gonna go somewhere else.
Go there.
I think it's more so the foundation of everything, right? It's right when you get in the plane. You know, we talked about one thing that's a problem is like checklist usage, right? So making sure the student is proficient with the checklist, they know how to use the checklist. They're not just, you know, doing the flow and then not looking at the checklist. Like everything needs to be strategic. Everything needs to be like followed as it states.
Yeah.
And same thing with the maneuvers. Like, you know, we have the maneuver guides and they have recommended speeds and they have, you know, recommended RPM settings for a reason. Right. So it's like, if your landings are bad, right, the typical thing is it starts in the pattern, and that's what everybody says. But if you have a bad traffic pattern, right, you'll probably have a bad landing. And so, you know, it's just making sure the foundation is good in the student before you try to like pick apart little things. You know, you have to set them up for success.
Did you feel like you could notice that at times for yourself? Like, I guess what I'm wondering is, did that start to click at some point for you? That, because it's easy to sit there and hear someone say things like what you're saying, oh, your traffic pattern's off, that's why your landings aren't good, and then but not really like take that in and still just try to nail your landing without thinking about the traffic pattern more, without putting the problem there and focusing on it more. Is there a point at which you started to realize like, oh, I'm missing like fundamentals?
Because you're focused on one thing at a time, right? So like if I'm training, like this has happened to me, sure. Like if I'm training and I have a bad landing, I'm not thinking about it in the pattern. In fact, sometimes I'll make my pattern smaller so I can get to the landing quicker. You know what I mean? Like I'd actually make the pattern worse because I was like, you know what, I just need to get back to the landing and make it better. And then I'd have another bad landing. And then it's like, well, I'm messing up the whole foundation. right? My head's not in the
Wow.
right space. I'm not thinking about anything else that I'm doing. I'm just like, I need to get over the runway. I need to land the plane. It doesn't really work
Focused
like
on the
that.
wrong thing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something to look out for maybe future pilots and students. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
What about you? Were you gonna try to go anywhere with like maybe a technical thing?
No, I 100% agree
Yeah.
with what he said. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just run with it, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it was pretty solid.
Yeah,
I mean, I would
okay.
have said it better, but that was good.
I like that. Well, I want to know what you guys are excited about because we're getting towards the end here, and for anyone who's listening, one more time, if you if you're still listening, I'm sure you're just interested in aviation at this point.
Yeah.
So you know, you can watch some more YouTube videos. You can do some research. If you're in the DFW area, in the Phoenix area, if you're going to be in the Conroe area, just give us a call. We can answer your questions at very least. If it turns out that maybe you're not a good fit, if we give you advice that maybe you need to do X, Y, and Z first, maybe you'll be a step closer, or at least maybe have more clarity about whether or not you could do something like this. It's okay to give a call. Our people are pretty helpful. Well, they're right up the hallway. Actually, I talk to them every day. They're some of my favorite people. And of course, take a discovery flight. Discovery flights are where a lot of people say, "Hey, that's how I knew." That's how I don't just ride in the plane, right? You get to touch the yoke. You get to actually like maneuver the plane for a moment and see what it feels like. So I just would like to put that out there. Give us a call. Go to thrustflight.com and we'll be happy to help. If you're not anywhere near, consider moving, sure, or just call your local flight school. It doesn't have to be Thrust Flight. We want everyone who's interested in aviation to take that first step. But for you guys, you're at an interesting part of your journey. You're going to be making some moves. You're going to be learning a lot of things. Looking a little further down the road, even though we talked about the journey a little bit, I want to ask you about the destination. What do you imagine for yourselves down the road?
Sheesh. Well, it used to be like American, wide body captain 777, 100%. But since then, I've kind of toned down the expectation.
Yeah.
You still want to be positive about it.
Yeah.
But I right now, kind of like we were talking about before, I'm appreciative of any step from now to that wide body, position. So if I have to take on some 135 operations or cargo operations, at this point, I'm just gonna be thankful for whatever I could take. But ideally, wide body American.
Right. Hey, that gives you something to always keep you pushing. Then
100%.
It's the journey.
Yeah, yeah. It's a journey.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any particular vision?
No, I really don't. Honestly, like you have a vision until the moment hits you, and I was so worried, and not worried, but more so like I need to get the CFI jobs. This is really all I'm focused on at this point, because it was like this, or I'm going back to Walmart. Mm-hmm. So, and then looking for until another one opens up. So, I'm thankful I'm here now. And, maybe after a couple hundred more hours, I can start looking into what I want to do. But
why even worry about it now, right?
Yeah, I'm, kind of what he said earlier, you have to be invested in where you're at. And right now, that's my main focus.
Yeah, just glad I got here, honestly.
Really glad I got here.
That's
a
real.
Good point.
That's real.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I've really enjoyed talking to y'all, even probably more than the first time. I mean, it's cool to see someone on their journey and get to where they're at right now. Yes, and like we're definitely gonna have to do more videos. I'll probably have to come down to Conroe after you guys settle in a little bit and ask you some more questions. If you guys haven't seen them on YouTube yet, I think that was a fun video. I know y'all are like, oh, there's some things I would do different in that video,
a little cringe.
A little cringe, but it gives people the insight. Like, hey, man, you can take a look at it. That's why I want to do a second part, so everyone can see like the kind of conversation we're having now, even if they're not watching this. If you are watching though, look out for that second part.
Yeah.
So thank you, Hassan. Thank you, Jacob, for joining in. I mean, I'll do this one last thing. You'll have one piece of advice. One main piece of advice. You've given a lot of advice, but do you have one piece of advice to give somebody who's interested in aviation or just starting their journey?
Golly, man. Never been asked this before.
I know, and it's so broad, and you already gave a bunch of advice.
Never asked this before.
We can zoom out a little bit if you think about yourselves.
I go. I was gonna say kind of like what I said before. I just really want to harp on it again. Enjoy every single flight, enjoy every single step, celebrate the small wins, celebrate the small moments for sure, and yeah, just make sure you have no regrets in the end. So just celebrate the small wins for sure.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I love that.
That's real. Yeah, you're gonna stick with that one. You're gonna co-sign that one.
Give me some.
I can sign off on it. Like
All right,
I
man.
like
All
what you
right,
said.
all
I
right.
like
Cool,
what you
cool, cool,
said.
cool.
Celebrate the wins.
Celebrate the small wins. Yeah, celebrate everything.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all for joining in. We just had another episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. And today it was with Jacob and Hassan once more. And we'll look forward to having you guys as viewers on the next episode. See you next week.